The opera house stood like a palace of light in the middle of the city. Tall glass windows reflected the glow of the street lamps, and soft music floated outside before the performance even began. People from many worlds walked through the large doors, humans in fine clothes and aliens in their shimmering garments. It was a night of culture and beauty, meant to show unity between different peoples. Aaron had never been inside such a place before. His work as a cultural assistant usually kept him busy with translations and arranging schedules, but tonight his supervisor had given him a rare gift: 2 tickets to the Grand Opera. He could not find anyone to join him at such short notice, so he kept 1 ticket in his pocket and entered alone. The air smelled faintly of flowers and polished wood. He climbed the stairs and followed an usher to his seat in the balcony. From above, the stage looked like a golden frame waiting for a picture. Velvet curtains hung heavy and dark, ready to rise at the first note. Around him, people whispered in low voices. Jewelry sparkled in the dim light, and the soft rustle of dresses and coats filled the space. Aaron leaned back, trying not to look out of place. He was just a young man in a plain suit, nothing like the wealthy guests around him. Then, across the balcony, he saw her. She was sitting quietly, her hands folded in her lap, her posture graceful. Even among so many bright clothes and beautiful faces, she stood out. Her skin carried a soft shimmer, like starlight trapped beneath the surface. Her hair, long and flowing, seemed to shift colors slightly as the light touched it. Most striking of all were her eyes, large, luminous, and filled with a kind of gentle curiosity. She was not human. She was one of the alien envoy's daughters, guests of honor in this cultural gathering. Aaron's heart skipped. He quickly looked away, not wanting to be caught staring. But something inside him urged him to glance back, just for a moment more. When he did, he realized she was already looking at him. For a few seconds, their eyes met across the space between the balconies. It was nothing more than a shared glance, yet it felt like the air itself had changed. The noise of whispers faded, the grand chandeliers above seemed to blur, and even the waiting stage disappeared. All that existed in that moment was the quiet pull between 2 strangers from different worlds. Aaron felt warmth rise in his chest. He did not know her name, and he knew very well that people like him were not supposed to mix closely with alien dignitaries. But something about her gaze made it impossible to forget. She did not look away immediately. Instead, she gave the faintest tilt of her head, almost like a silent greeting, before turning her attention back to the stage. The orchestra began with a swell of strings, and the curtains rose. The opera had begun. Yet Aaron found it difficult to focus. His eyes returned again and again to the figure across the balcony. Whenever the singers raised their voices, he could see the light catch in her eyes, and he imagined she must be enjoying the music deeply. Once, when the melody softened into a gentle lull, she smiled so slightly that only someone watching her closely would notice. Aaron's chest tightened. That smile was not for him, yet he felt as though he had been given a secret gift. He tried to remind himself of reality. He was just a small part of the crowd, one ordinary man. She belonged to a world far above his reach, a world of rules and expectations. Still, the forbidden fire had already begun to burn in his heart. Across the balcony, Lyra, though Aaron did not yet know her name, felt something stir inside her as well. She had attended many official events, always sitting in silence, always keeping to her family's rules. But tonight was different. When her eyes had met his, she had sensed no arrogance, no hidden motive. Only a quiet, honest wonder. And for reasons she could not explain, it had made her feel seen, not as a symbol of her people, but simply as herself. As the first act of the opera unfolded, two stories played side by side. On stage, performers sang of love, betrayal, and destiny. In the balcony, two strangers sat far apart, yet already tied together by an invisible thread. Neither spoke. Neither dared to move closer. But both knew something unusual had begun in that single glance. When the curtain closed for the first intermission, Aaron let out a breath he did not realize he had been holding. He told himself not to imagine impossible things, yet his heart whispered differently. Across the balcony, Lyra shifted slightly, her glowing eyes lifting once more toward him, as if to confirm that their silent connection had not been a dream. And so, under the golden lights of the opera house, the first spark of a forbidden fire quietly began to glow. The hall filled with soft voices as the intermission began. People stood to stretch, some left for refreshments, and others leaned over to whisper excitedly about the performance. But Aaron did not move. His hands rested tightly on the armrests of his seat. He told himself to stay calm, to act natural, yet his eyes kept drifting across the balcony. She was still there. Lyra remained seated, unlike the other guests who had stepped away. She sat with the same quiet grace as before, her hands resting lightly together, her eyes lowered as if lost in thought. But every few moments, she lifted her gaze just slightly, always in his direction. Aaron's heart beat faster each time. He wanted to believe it was not his imagination, that she really was looking at him. He dared a small smile, uncertain and quick. For a moment, she held his gaze, and though she did not smile in return, the calm steadiness in her eyes felt like an answer. The lights dimmed again, calling the audience back to their seats. The orchestra began tuning their instruments, filling the air with scattered notes. Slowly, the hall settled, and the second act began. The singers stepped onto the stage, their voices rising high. The story told of two lovers separated by walls of family and duty. Their eyes met across great distances, and their longing was expressed through song. The music was beautiful, but for Aaron and Lyra, the play on stage felt too close to their own hearts. Aaron found himself watching her more than the performers. Every time the singers exchanged longing glances, he thought of her across the balcony. When the music swelled with sorrow, he imagined her feelings hidden behind her calm face. And then when the melody softened into a tender duet, he looked directly at her. This time, she did not look away. The space between them vanished. Their eyes locked, and though no words were spoken, a conversation seemed to form in the silence. Her gaze carried questions: why are you looking at me? Do you not fear what others would say? His own eyes tried to answer: I do not know why, but I cannot help it. I see something in you I cannot forget. Back and forth it went, as if the orchestra itself was carrying their silent exchange. When the strings rose in gentle waves, it felt like laughter shared without sound. When the drums thundered, it was as though both admitted the danger of being seen. The opera was grand, but their quiet dialogue was even greater in their hearts. At one point, Aaron leaned forward, resting his elbows on the rail of the balcony, trying to hide his nervousness. She noticed. For the first time, her lips curved just slightly, the hint of a smile she had tried to keep hidden. It was not bold, not open, but it was enough to make his chest tighten with joy. The performance moved toward its climax. The two lovers on stage reached for each other but were torn apart by forces beyond their control. The audience sighed at the beauty and sadness of it all. Yet in the balcony, Aaron and Lyra did not feel sorrow. They felt something else: hope. Because unlike the story on stage, Their connection was just beginning. When the curtains fell for the final intermission, the hall filled once more with applause and voices. Aaron sat back, breathless. He felt as though he had run a long distance, though he had not moved from his seat. His hands trembled slightly, and he pressed them against his knees to steady himself. Across the way, Lyra did not rise to leave either. She glanced at the people beside her, then at him again. This time, she allowed her gaze to linger longer, as if testing how far their silent language could go. Aaron's courage grew. Slowly, carefully, he lifted one hand from his lap and placed it on the railing in front of him. It was a simple movement, but it was bold enough for her to see. He did not wave or signal, but the gesture seemed to say, "I am here. I will not hide." For a moment, Lyra froze, unsure. Her eyes moved down to his hand, then back to his face. Finally, she gave the smallest nod, almost invisible to anyone else. But to Aaron, it was louder than the orchestra itself. The final act began, pulling everyone's attention back to the stage. But for Aaron and Lyra, the real performance was happening above, in the balconies, where no spotlight shone and no script existed. They had spoken to each other without a single word. And in that silent conversation, the forbidden fire grew brighter. The opera ended with thunderous applause. People rose to their feet, clapping and cheering as the performers bowed again and again. The hall glowed with golden light, and the air was filled with excitement. Aaron clapped politely, but his thoughts were far away. His eyes searched across the balcony. She was still there. Lyra clapped softly, her face calm, but when the crowd's attention turned fully to the stage, she glanced toward him once more. It was quick, almost hidden, but it was enough. For Aaron, the glance felt like a question: will you stop here, or will you dare to step forward? When the crowd began leaving, Aaron made his choice. He moved slowly, trying to appear casual as he slipped into the hallway that led away from the balconies. The corridor was wide, lined with tall lamps and decorated with painted walls. Guests passed by, talking about the performance, their laughter echoing in the space. Aaron leaned against the wall, pretending to admire the paintings, though his heart raced in his chest. Would she come this way? Would she ignore him? Or worse, would she see him and choose to look away? Minutes passed. His doubts grew heavy, but then he saw her. Lyra walked gracefully beside two older attendants. Her long robe shimmered with faint colors as she moved, and her glowing eyes looked straight ahead. Aaron's breath caught. He almost stepped back, but then, as if by fate, the attendants paused to greet someone down the hall. Lyra slowed, her gaze drifting until it landed on him. For a moment, neither of them moved. The busy hallway around them seemed to blur, the voices of others turning distant. It was only her and him. Aaron forced himself to take a step forward. His voice was soft, almost a whisper. "Good evening." Her eyes widened slightly. She glanced toward her attendants, then back to him. "You should not speak to me here," she said quietly, her words smooth but filled with warning. "I know," he admitted, his throat dry. "But I had to. I didn't want this night to end without at least one word between us." Her lips pressed into a thin line, torn between fear and something else. She lowered her voice even further. "If anyone sees, there will be questions." "Then just one moment," he said. "Only one. And I'll go." She hesitated. Her hands tightened around the folds of her robe, her glowing eyes flickering with doubt. But then, as if surrendering to a quiet truth inside her heart, she gave a small nod. "One moment," she whispered. Aaron's chest lifted with relief. He smiled faintly. "My name is Aaron." Her voice softened. "Lyra." The sound of her name struck him like music. For a second, he forgot about the crowded hall, the risk, and the rules that stood between them. He repeated it gently. "Lyra. It suits you." Her cheeks glimmered faintly, though she quickly looked away, hiding the small change in her expression. "You are bold, Aaron," she said, though her tone carried no anger. "Do you not fear what others would say?" "I fear it," he admitted honestly. "But I fear more that I might never see you again." Her eyes met his once more, and in them, he saw a storm of feelings: duty, caution, and something tender that she tried to hide. She lowered her voice, almost too soft to hear. "We are not meant to be seen together." Aaron leaned closer, though still careful to keep distance. "Then perhaps we can meet where no one is watching." Her attendants called her name, their voices drawing nearer. The moment was ending. Lyra looked at him, her heart torn. She could walk away, pretend this never happened, bury the spark before it grew. But her lips parted, and in the faintest whisper, she answered, "During the next performance, the balcony again." And then she was gone, turning with grace to join her attendants as though nothing had happened. She walked away without looking back, her robe trailing behind her like flowing light. Aaron stood frozen, his heart racing, his hands trembling. He had spoken to her. He had learned her name. And most of all, he had been given hope. The opera house emptied slowly, but for Aaron, the night had only just begun. He stepped out into the cool air of the city streets, the sounds of carriages and voices around him. Yet none of it mattered. His thoughts were only of her, of Lyra, of the promise of their next meeting. For the first time, he felt that the forbidden fire inside him was not just his alone. She had felt it too. And soon, they would meet again in the balcony, not as silent strangers, but as two souls daring to share a secret. The second night at the opera came faster than Aaron expected. All week he could think of nothing else but Lyra's quiet promise. He replayed their short conversation again and again in his mind. The way she had whispered her name, the way her eyes had softened, the way she had agreed to meet again, it all felt like a dream he did not want to wake from. When evening came, Aaron dressed as neatly as he could, though his suit was still simple compared to the wealthy guests he would be among. He carried no flowers, no gifts. He told himself that words and honesty would be enough. With a fast-beating heart, he walked through the shining doors of the opera house once more. Inside, everything looked the same: the polished floors, the velvet curtains, the sparkling chandeliers. Yet to him, everything felt different. This was no longer just a building. It was now the place where a secret lived. He climbed the stairs and made his way to the balcony. He sat in the same seat as before, his eyes scanning quickly across the hall. For a moment, his chest sank when he did not see her. He told himself to stay calm, to wait. The performance had not yet begun. Perhaps she was simply late. Then, just as the orchestra began tuning their instruments, she appeared. Lyra stepped lightly into the balcony, her robe catching the glow of the lamps. She carried herself with the same grace as always, but this time her eyes searched quickly, as if looking for something or someone. When her gaze found him, it softened, and a faint relief passed across her face. She lowered herself into her seat, this time closer to the shadows, almost hidden from those around her. Aaron could not stop his small smile. She had come. The performance began, and the audience turned their attention to the stage. But in the dim glow of the balcony, Aaron leaned slightly toward her side, his voice soft enough to be carried only a short distance. "I wasn't sure you would come." Lyra's eyes stayed on the stage, though her lips curved faintly. "I almost didn't. My family expects me to stay close to them during such events." "And yet you are here," Aaron said, his voice warm. Her glowing eyes flickered to him for just a moment. "Yes. I am here." They both sat back, careful to keep their movements small, careful to let the opera shield their words. Each time the orchestra grew louder, Aaron dared to whisper another question. He asked about her favorite music, and she admitted she liked the gentle strings more than the thunder of drums. He told her about his work arranging cultural meetings, and she laughed softly when he described the endless paperwork that always seemed to follow. Her laugh was like a melody itself, quiet yet full of life. Aaron found himself wanting to hear it again. In return, Lyra spoke of her home world, its rivers that shimmered in the light of two moons, its gardens filled with tall silver trees. Her voice carried a kind of longing, as though speaking of it made her miss it even more. "Do you ever wish to go back?" Aaron asked. "Sometimes," she said softly. "But I also wish to see more. The galaxy is wide, and I want to walk through it, not just stand behind my family's shadow." Her words touched him deeply. He realized she was not just an envoy's daughter, not just a figure of grace. She was someone who longed for freedom, someone who dreamed of more than duty. The music swelled, covering their whispers. For a moment, they sat in silence, their shoulders nearly facing each other across the distance of the balcony. The space between them felt smaller than before, as if the shadows themselves had closed the gap. Aaron dared to speak what rested in his heart. "It feels strange, doesn't it? To sit here, talking like this, as though the rest of the world cannot see us." Lyra's eyes softened. "Strange, yes. But, it also feels right." Her words lit something inside him. The forbidden fire grew stronger, brighter. He wanted to reach across the distance, to take her hand, but he forced himself to remain still. The risk was too great. Instead, he whispered, "Then let us keep this place. Our balcony. No one else needs to know." Her gaze lingered on him, and then she gave a small nod. "Yes. Our balcony." The opera continued, its voices rising in dramatic songs of love and struggle. But for Aaron and Lyra, the true story was unfolding above, hidden in the shadows. They laughed in hushed tones, shared secrets beneath the music, and let their hearts draw closer. By the time the final curtain fell, they both knew what the balcony had become. It was not just a seat in a grand opera house. It was their secret world, a fragile yet precious place where they could meet as themselves. As the audience applauded, Aaron and Lyra exchanged one last glance, filled with promise. They did not need to say goodbye aloud. The fire between them said it for them. For several nights, the opera balcony became their hidden place. Each performance gave Aaron and Lyra a chance to meet in the shadows, to share quiet words and soft laughter. They spoke of music, of stars, of dreams they both carried but could never speak aloud to others. The balcony felt safe, like a world of their own where rules could not follow. But outside the opera house, the real world waited, full of heavy eyes and unspoken laws. It began with small things. Aaron noticed a colleague from his office watching him with raised brows when he returned late at night after the opera. He heard whispers about how he seemed distracted, how his mind was somewhere else. At first, he ignored it. But when he saw two officials from the Cultural Council looking toward him with sharp suspicion, his heart tightened. They must have noticed the way his eyes wandered during the performances, always toward the envoy's daughter. Lyra felt the pressure even more strongly. Her family had strict expectations. She was often reminded that she carried their honor, that every action reflected on her people. One evening, her father spoke with her in the quiet of their quarters. "You must remain close to us during these public events," he said firmly. "There are many who watch us, waiting for mistakes. We cannot give them reason to doubt." Lyra lowered her eyes, her voice soft. "Yes, father." But inside, her heart twisted. Each word felt like a wall being built higher between her and Aaron. She wanted to argue, to tell her father that she was not just a symbol, but a person with feelings. Yet her lips remained closed. The next night at the opera, the weight of these pressures followed both of them into the balcony. Aaron arrived first, his steps slower than usual, his thoughts heavy. He leaned on the railing, staring down at the stage that had not yet come to life. His heart asked if he was being foolish, if this secret would only end in pain. When Lyra entered, her movements were graceful as always, but there was tension in her face. She sat beside the shadows, but this time her eyes did not search for him right away. She folded her hands in her lap and stared quietly at the stage. Aaron turned to her, his voice low. "You seem troubled." Her glowing eyes lifted to meet his. "Do you not feel it too?" The eyes, the whispers. He sighed. "I do. People are starting to notice. My colleagues ask questions. And I fear if your family finds out they will not allow it," she finished for him, her tone soft but sharp with truth. "They will take me away from these halls. You will never see me again." The orchestra began to play, the curtains rising, but for the first time, neither of them cared for the performance. The opera's story unfolded in front of them, yet it only mirrored the storm in their own hearts. On stage, two characters sang of duty and love, each forced to choose between the heart's desire and the world's command. Lyra's voice trembled as she whispered, "Perhaps we should stop before it is too late." The words struck Aaron deeply, sharper than any blade. His chest tightened, but he leaned closer, his voice urgent yet calm. "Is that what you truly want? To walk away? To forget this?" Her eyes filled with conflict. She looked at him, then down at her hands. "I don't know what I want. I only know what I fear." Silence stretched between them, heavy and painful. Around them, the audience clapped at a beautiful song, but for Aaron and Lyra, there was no beauty in that moment. Only the weight of choices, and the shadow of loss. Aaron clenched his hands on the railing. "I cannot pretend this means nothing," he said softly. "I have tried to be careful, to be wise, but my heart refuses. When I see you, Lyra, the world feels brighter. When I hear your voice, I feel alive in a way I never did before. Tell me, can you truly walk away from that?" Her glowing eyes shimmered, as if a hidden tear longed to fall, though she kept her face calm. She whispered back, "I cannot answer tonight." The final act of the opera was tragic. On stage, the lovers were torn apart by the anger of families and the cruelty of fate. Their voices soared in sorrow, and the audience sighed with emotion. Aaron and Lyra sat in silence, their hearts aching with the reminder of what might await them. When the curtain closed and the applause rose, they exchanged one last look. No smiles, no whispers, only a heavy understanding that their fire burned bright but stood on dangerous ground. As they left the balcony separately, each carried the same thought: how long could a secret survive against the weight of two worlds? The days after their heavy night in the balcony felt long and restless for Aaron. He replayed Lyra's words again and again: perhaps we should stop before it is too late. The thought of losing her made his heart ache in ways he had never felt before. He could not let silence end what had begun between them. He knew the risks, knew the danger of stepping too far, but his heart had already chosen. And so, he decided to do something bold. On the morning of the next performance, he wrote a letter. He kept the words simple, his handwriting careful. Lyra, I cannot pretend my feelings are nothing. Meeting you has shown me colors I never knew existed. I admire your courage, your laughter, and the light in your eyes. I do not ask for promises. I only want you to know that my heart is yours, no matter what walls stand between us. If you feel even a spark of the same, then meet me again tonight in the balcony. If you cannot, then I will understand, though my heart will never forget you. He folded the letter neatly, his hands trembling. That evening, he arrived early to the opera house. The hall was still filling, the crowd busy with their conversations. Quietly, he slipped into the balcony, placed the letter under the cushion of her seat, and returned to his own place. Then, he waited. The minutes felt like hours. His eyes searched the entrance again and again, his chest tightening with every passing second. What if she chose not to come? What if the weight of her world was too heavy? Finally, she arrived. Lyra stepped gracefully into the balcony, her robe flowing softly behind her. She lowered herself into her seat, unaware at first of what waited there. Then her hand brushed against the folded paper. She paused, glanced around, then carefully opened it. Aaron's breath caught as he watched her read. Her glowing eyes moved slowly over the words. He saw her lips press together, then part slightly as if a quiet breath had escaped her. When she finished, she held the paper for a long moment against her lap, her expression unreadable. The lights dimmed, and the orchestra began. But Aaron could not focus on the stage. His entire world narrowed to the space across the balcony, where she sat with his words in her hands. For a long time, she did not look at him. His heart sank, heavy with fear. But then, as the first act neared its end, she turned. Their eyes met, and this time there was no hesitation. She held his gaze steadily, her luminous eyes brighter than ever in the dim light. Slowly, she lifted her hand and placed it gently on the railing before her, the same way he had done days ago. It was a silent answer, but it was enough. Aaron's chest filled with relief, with joy so strong it nearly brought tears to his eyes. She had not walked away. She had chosen to stay. When the music rose louder, covering whispers, Lyra leaned slightly toward him, her lips forming quiet words meant only for him. "You are reckless," she said, her voice soft but trembling with emotion. "Perhaps," Aaron replied, his own whisper shaking. "But I would rather be reckless than silent." Her lips curved faintly, the shadow of a smile. She pressed the letter gently against her chest before folding it back into her robe. "You speak as though you do not fear anything." "I do fear," he admitted, his eyes never leaving hers. "But I fear losing you more than anything else." For a moment, the balcony disappeared. The crowded hall, the music, the shining stage, all of it faded away. It was just them, two souls daring to reach for each other in the quiet shadows. During the final act, as the opera's characters sang of courage and sacrifice, Lyra made her choice. Slowly, carefully, she reached across the space between them. Her hand brushed against his, hidden by the cover of the balcony shadows. Their fingers touched, hesitated, then finally held. The world did not stop. No one turned their heads. But to them, the moment felt as powerful as the universe itself. When the curtain fell and the applause filled the hall, they did not let go. Not until the lights brightened and the crowd began to rise did they slowly release each other, their eyes holding the promise of what had just been spoken without words. As they left the balcony separately, Aaron's heart burned with new strength. He no longer doubted, no longer feared. Whatever came, he had told her his truth. And she, in her own way, had answered. The forbidden fire was no longer hidden in silence. It had been confessed, and now it burned brighter than ever. The night of the opera ended, but the story of Aaron and Lyra was far from finished. Aaron walked home with his heart pounding like a steady drum. The memory of her hand in his still lingered on his skin, warm and alive. For the first time, he felt that their silent bond had crossed the wall between them. But he also knew the risks had grown larger than ever. If anyone had seen, if anyone suspected, their secret could burn their lives to ashes. The following day, Aaron could not keep still. He worked at the library, but his mind drifted. He replayed her whispered words, her gentle smile, the way she pressed his letter to her heart. Each memory pushed him closer to a single thought: this cannot remain hidden forever. That evening, he returned to the opera house earlier than usual. The crowd had not yet filled the place, but Lyra was already there, standing quietly near the balcony railing. The soft glow from her eyes reflected in the polished wood, casting a gentle light across her face. "You came early," Aaron said, approaching her carefully. She turned, her gaze calm but carrying an unspoken storm. "And so did you." There was a silence, heavy with meaning. Finally, Aaron spoke. "I cannot keep this in the shadows anymore. My heart will not let me." Lyra lowered her eyes, her long lashes brushing against her cheeks. "Do you understand what you are asking? My world and yours are not meant to join. If we are seen, if we are known," her words faded, but the fear in them was clear. "I know," Aaron said softly. "But I also know this: my life without you would be only half a life. You've already changed me, Lyra. You've shown me beauty I didn't believe existed. How can I walk away now?" She looked at him, her luminous eyes trembling with conflict. For a long time, she said nothing. Then, at last, she whispered, "And if I say yes? If I choose this path with you, Aaron, then there is no return." Aaron stepped closer, his voice steady. "Then let there be no return. Let us walk forward, no matter what lies ahead." Her lips parted in a breath that was almost a sigh. Then, slowly, she reached out, her fingers brushing his hand. This time, there was no hesitation. Their hands clasped, firm and true. The music of the evening began, but neither of them cared for the stage anymore. They had written their own opera, one that no curtain could close. When the performance ended and the crowd spilled into the night streets, Aaron and Lyra did not part as before. Instead, they slipped away into the quieter lanes, far from the chatter of the hall. The moon hung above them, pale and silver, casting its light over the cobblestones. They walked side by side, their hands brushing now and then, their silence comfortable but alive with unspoken words. Finally, Lyra stopped beneath an old archway. Her robe shimmered faintly, the glow from her skin soft against the stone walls. "Do you not fear what will happen when they discover us?" she asked. Aaron met her gaze without wavering. I fear many things. But I will not fear loving you. If the world calls it forbidden, then let the world speak. My heart has already chosen. Her eyes softened, and for the first time, her smile was unguarded, pure, and radiant. You are more stubborn than I thought. And you, Aaron said gently, are braver than you believe. For a long time, they stood together in the quiet street, the world hushed around them. No audience watched, no music played, and yet it felt like the most important moment of their lives. Then Leora leaned closer, her forehead resting gently against his. The glow of her eyes wrapped them in a halo of soft light. So this is our fire, she whispered. A fire the world would forbid, yet one we will protect. Aaron closed his eyes, breathing in the truth of her words. Yes, he answered, his voice low but steady. Our fire. The night stretched long, but neither of them cared. They had stepped beyond the balcony, beyond silence, beyond fear. Together, they chose to face whatever would come. And though the world might never understand, their hearts knew one truth: the forbidden fire, once lit, could never be extinguished. It would burn in every glance, every touch, every shared breath, as long as they stood together. The opera's curtains had fallen, but their story had only just begun.